Welcome to Karate Cafe, your source for martial arts conversation since 2005. And now, here's your hosts, Paul Wilson and Dan Williams.
Hello again, everybody. It's Paul here with yet another episode of Karate Cafe Live. Um, Off my center line, as always, is my good friend Dan Williams. Dan, how are you?
I am well. I'm well. Yeah. Everything's the
Things
weather's getting warmer in Michigan and it's gonna snow on Monday, but other than that,
it's like a foot deep, or however many centimeters that is up here in
right?
Canada.
Oh
Um,
geez.
yeah, yep, it's pretty big. Let's see, no comments yet. That's good. I don't know who's watching. I don't know who's viewing, and that's all right. But we've gotten some good feedback. Had more than a few people, so I got to take off my old guy glasses every now and again.
Ah,
Um, some good feedback. Some people like it. Few people streaming while we're on the show. That's cool. The whole idea, once again, is to start the conversation, right? So we talk about stuff. If you happen to be able to listen in on the inner Googles, uh, weigh in. Otherwise, you can watch the rerun and give us a piece of your mind, much as we give.
yeah. Just like we're giving people a piece of ours for
Uh,
whatever that is worth,
yeah, martial arts has missed an
which
important
ain't
voice
much.
in the last
That's
couple of
right.
years, and so we're now here. See, you're still in the garage.
I am, yeah, working on my interdimensional transporter.
Your transmorgifier for those of us
That
of a certain age.
oh yes.
The anyway, so we got the topic. This was the topic that popped out. We call it facing the freeze. I got a question from someone, and I answered them in due course. But then, as I thought about it, I thought this is a really good topic for our martial brethren and sisterin out there, and anyone else at the ships and sea that's listening to it. So I was going to go ahead and read the question. I was going to read my thoughtful and nuanced answer,
Mm.
and then we will discuss. And if anyone out there has any feedback, please do share.
Please feed us back.
All right. Anyway, so this was a question uh, from a person up here. They said, I'm not a martial artist, but I have been bullied and assaulted, uh, and I've just frozen in panic. How do I get past that kind of response? So I thought about it for a little bit, and this is the my reply. Uh, it's not all inclusive because I've thought about some things since then, but it was a shot in the dark. Are you ready?
I'm
I
ready.
said, as I put on my big old person glasses, that is a pretty big and nuanced topic. Uh, there's a couple of simple answers in quotes. One is training, and two is you're likely never to get past it on some level. Uh, that feeling of freezing even happens to martial artists, especially when encountering something you're unprepared for, like getting hit for the first time in class, or later having to defend yourself or someone else. Because when stuff gets real, things go crazy. There is a famous saying attributed to that world famous sensei, Mike Tyson. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. We live our lives, usually violence free, no matter what the reality based self defense guys like to push. The majority of us never really encounter a fight or flight situation or bullying as adults. The secret that many martial arts instructors don't tell you is that most defense training rarely covers the internal and soft skills of defense, and that will also include overcoming the initial shock. Law enforcement, first responders, and military get over the training via, well, training, including training by trauma, like just getting pushed in the deep end and seeing what happens, right? Uh, and that's how they develop the mindset and for the environment that they're in within that context. Regular folks, civilians, can try and simulate it, but will never be able to really reach the same thing. Training in a defense art can, of course, help in many ways. One obvious way is regular sessions of both attacking and being attacked, in quotes, pressure testing, yada, 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 can help get past the freeze. And you'll have some tools to apply and some concept of how to react when you reach that state. as you train and add the tools and get some extra variables, it'll solidify the foundation, but you have to constantly sort of train and aim for it. You can't really account for every scenario or variable. A lot of military training is based on the previous wars, and then they try and figure out what's coming up in the future. A majority of martial arts instructors are really just parroting what they've been told by their instructors, and then what their instructors were told by their instructors. That covers lineage and history and all kinds of stuff too. Uh, but for all the posturing, most civilian defense classes are based on faith and bravado, and then that hoping that what they will train in will work and even help. That being said, it does move the needle in the direction you want to go. I'm talking about training here. It will install some fundamentals, competence, and a level of ability to push past the freeze, ideally. And sometimes the freeze is usually after action. Like, like sort of like, did that just happen? Like, no matter what you did,
Hmm.
you'll stand there and go like, whoa, did that really just happen? Uh, and that can be as bad in self-defense as freezing while it happens. So uh, my original, I reiterated my answer.
It's
You know
easy
what I'm
for you
saying?
to say.
Clearly not. Number one is training, and number two is you're likely never to get past it, on some
Yeah.
level. So, like in my dojo, the number one rule is do something even if it's wrong. So, you throw some hands, you move away, you move towards, you scream, you do something to get that initiative back in a defense situation, uh, and be in a better position. So that was sort of my
Hmm.
my bird's eye lowdown. Dan, your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, I think that that's sort of a good summary of my feelings as well. And this is um I hesitate to some degree to even have an opinion, right? Because there's
That's
there's
not going to
so
work for a
much
podcast, man.
right, yeah, right. Um there's so much psychology involved in this. There's so much self-defense in this as opposed to martial arts. And I think that we usually take great care in making sure that we identify that those things are different. That being said, because they are kissing cousins, most martial artists have a fairly good grasp of self-defense.
Mhm.
I I like the saying, repetition breeds confidence and confidence breeds success, right? So one of the things that we can do and one of the things that we often do in the martial arts is repetition, right? You do the thing over and over and over and over again so that it becomes intuitive or instinctual, right?
Right,
You mentioned like putting your hands up, for example, right?
right.
This is something where one of the arts that I know of, like boxing, for example, and I used to have an instructor. I had a Hapkido instructor that was a kickboxer, and if he saw your hands down at any point during class, he would smack you in the head.
Mm,
And so it's that kind of thing where you just intuitively learn, and even if the freezing, I think there are different degrees of it, right? There's the freezing
for sure.
of where you just stand there in stunned shock, and that is probably the worst form. But there is also like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I do know that I need to get my hands up, right?
Right.
Like, I don't know what's going to happen next, but this is my intuition is to get my hands up. And so there's levels to that. I think the freezing instinct, um, it can be it can be trained. I'm gonna say out of someone. It can be trained to lessen, and in my mind, lessen to a degree where it's insignificant. I know that my instructor, Chuck Pippin, when he does self-defense seminars specifically, uh, he will stand somebody against a wall and scream at them, right? Like
Mhm.
this close to their face, and just start screaming at them. Because To me, like during a self-defense seminar or self-defense training specifically, it is to practice unsafe things in a safe environment, right?
Right.
So having and Chuck is 6'2" and probably at least 250, right? He's a big
Yeah.
dude and it's scary, you know?
Right.
And so when you get that and you train that over and over and over again, you can start to lessen its impact on your psyche. You can say, okay, the yelling isn't the scary part, right? The
Right.
screaming isn't the scary part. I'm not gonna, and so again, you just kind of you can move it into a category in your brain to say, this is something I need to start preparing something for, as
Mhm.
opposed to, oh my God, what do I do? Right. And again, it goes back to training, 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 training. This is why this is why what is it? Boot camp looks like boot camp, is because they are attempting to empty your cup so that they can put what they want in it, which is keep moving forward, do what you need to do, even with bullets flying over your head. You need to
Mhm.
get over that hill, kind of thing, right? And so
Right.
I do think that repeated training and repeated exercises like that um, are incredibly helpful. I know that um, in Wing Chun, for example, we do a lot of stuff in trapping range, right? Which trapping is between a punch range and a grappling range. And it's very uncomfortable for most people. Most people
Yeah.
don't like to be in that range, and we train for that range. So we're very comfortable in that range, right? Um, and it is, in my opinion, there is an advantage to that then. And so again, it's just repeating it to get it comfortable. And you don't necessarily have to repeat it as in, I am going to go out and find dangerous situations to be in. You can, because your body's really reacting at a very intuitive level, right? So it's not your rational brain that's saying, hey, this is a dangerous situation and therefore I'm going to freeze and do nothing. It's totally it's your emotional brain, it's your subconscious. That's
Mhm.
what's reacting. So
Right.
if you can put yourself in an environment that to that side of your brain feels dangerous, even though your rational side knows that it's not, you can gain exposure to that stuff. It's in my opinion, it's similar to conquering a phobia. And the way you conquer a phobia is little steps to get you there. And I mean, bullying, if nothing else, will create a phobia of confrontation. That is for sure. Like you will become phobic of confrontation, period. And I would say this is something where really martial arts, it will improve your life. We talk about this frequently. It will improve your life beyond the self-defense kind of situations, right? Because if you grow up being afraid of confrontation, that's gonna influence your life. That's gonna influence your relationships. That's gonna influence your potentially job. That's gonna influence a lot of different aspects of your life where your self-confidence is going to be destroyed. You're going to have a lot of problems in life. And so I think getting exposure to that stuff again can help your self-confidence, bring down that fear level. And
Mhm.
that's really what it's all about, is bringing down that instinctual fear level to a manageable place. So yeah, I think training. And if bullying is a real and immediate concern for someone, they want to make sure that the school aligns, whatever school they go to, aligns with that goal. One of the things we talk about a lot is like there's all different kinds of martial arts schools. Every one of them is okay, right? It doesn't matter. But the important part is
No,
that,
mine is the best.
right, the important part is that that school aligns with you and your goals as an individual. And if you're being bullied, you really want to, like, the first thing you walk into a school and say, I'm being bullied, because that will be an immediate trigger for that instructor to go, okay, we're not going to take you down the normal lesson plan path, right? We're going to get you, that would be a trigger for me. Like, you're not going down the normal lesson plan path. We're going to do a couple private lessons. We're going to get used to you more comfortable with confrontation. We're going to get you, we are going to put you on a fast track for not getting bullied anymore, right?
Yeah,
And so again, look for that right school to make sure that that is something that they're engaged and involved with. I really think that you know, this is something that I get emotional about. I think bullying is um, a horrific epidemic in the world, and it causes a lot of damage to a lot of people beyond just like getting punched and kicked.
yeah,
It's people go through their lives for a long time with a lot of suffering.
yeah. Well, like our good friend Kyle King opinion says what you're saying is training is therapy. Yeah, I mean, I call it punch therapy a
Absolutely.
lot.
Yeah.
Whenever, especially during pandemic, when we were, I tell everybody, like come to punch therapy. You're
Yes.
doing something, you're working out to get past whatever's going on.
Yeah.
In this case, and to your point, one of the things that people have to remember is when you're going to a school, you look for a class or a seminar or whatever that flips one of your switches. And so if one of your switches is, this person that messaged me, they clearly knew this was a part of their psyche and like how to get past it, and even training might not even do it. That might be something that's even more ingrained. When I've done self-defense seminars at like other schools and stuff, I remember I was at one in New Mexico, and there was a bunch of people, and there was a woman who, you know, uh, everyone lined up and they talked about whatever. And then by about 15, 20 minutes in, when we started getting to the physical part, um, she just, tensed
Mm.
up, and it turns out, and the instructor, or it was a husband and wife that ran the dojo. And so the wife went over, she was a black belt, and she's like, are you okay? And she's like, well, I was assaulted, or and it's just really hard for me to even get someone to
Yep.
get that close, like
Yep.
a guy to get that close. So she
Yep.
worked with her for a while, and then did. And that class, I mean, she just couldn't work with a guy because it was just, and it might take a long time to get down
Yes. There's no
that
schedule
pipe,
for that.
and but you also then, as a student, or someone who's training it, need to identify, okay, that's something I need to work on and
Yes.
try and push a boundary, because that's one of the things that we talk about uh, often. And one of the things that I always trying to point out to people, and I just said it to somebody the other day, was like, you're working on the assumption that you're being attacked by another martial artist,
Right.
and you're not. So so more often than not, you're being attacked by some schmo, right? So that's what I'm talking about, taking the initiative back. So if someone expects you to react like this, and you react like this,
Hmm.
that can take the initiative back. It's not going to,
Yes.
I'm not saying it's going to stop everything. I'm not saying it's going to
Right.
get me, but it's just, oh, okay, this is not what I expected. And there are a lot of people who, you know, like you're saying, Mac, that the lizard brain move away from pain.
Hmm.
So if they
Hmm.
go to reach for you and you fucking smack their hand, they're not expecting a reaction like that. B, they're not expecting pain, and people want to move away from pain. Martial artists don't always move away from pain. That's why we do body conditioning. And we go to class and people are swinging
Yeah.
at us, and that's one of the other things that when I do self-defense seminars, I find people have a hard time with, of just getting used to actually hitting somebody else or hitting something else. Like, hit it.
Right.
This bag is
Right.
attacking you. Hit it. Is getting past that. So they have a hard enough time getting past the reaction of defending themselves, much less
Hmm.
the reaction of having to defend yourself. So,
Yeah.
and so all these places that talk about, pressure testing, pressure testing, they're onto something for sure. Knowing that, when things go wrong, when people are just coming in, but then I think there's that's a confidence builder, but is it a true confidence builder, or is it, a faith builder? Like I was talking about,
Mm,
like,
yeah.
um, the I used to see, you don't see them that much anymore. But you see all these reality based places that had the bullet man, and he's like, he's
Yeah.
all padded up
Yeah.
with a
Yeah.
big helmet,
The bear
and
suit or
and
whatever.
it's usually some big dude who's
Yeah.
like chasing after,
Yeah.
women and like hitting
Yep.
them and stuff like that, and they're hitting them, and it was one of the things was that's not great because no matter what they do, they're not going to be able to hurt the guy. So, so,
Right.
so that's what I'm talking about. There's that, let's say 10% of pressure testing that I think is the crucial 10% that people will not be able to enjoy. They won't be able to take a knee out. They won't be able to like gouge an eye. They won't be able to do that stuff that they need to do to defend themselves if it gets there at
Yeah.
that point. And you'll never get there. The military doesn't get there. I mean, we're not always shooting live rounds at one another. I mean, on the boat, we did a couple of exercises where, someone would shoot a torpedo towards you, but A, it's a dummy torpedo, and B, more than
You'd
likely
hope.
it's going to turn away, right? And so
Right.
it's like although if you
Yeah.
go on the internet, you'll see pictures of like, boat coming in with a torpedo that had gone through its sail because it didn't turn away. Um,
Oh,
that can
interesting.
still ruin your day, right?
Yeah.
So, but getting there, and by no means any RBST people that are frantically Krav Maga guys
Oh,
or
do it. Do it.
typing with their
Do
elbows,
it. Tell
getting really mad.
Paul. Tell Paul
Um,
what he really thinks.
I'm
Tell
not saying
yeah.
it's useless or
Yeah.
whatever. I'm just
Yeah.
saying sometimes I think
Well,
maybe it's selling something more so than you really need to. I mean, come on, let's be real. So
yeah. And that's the problem I think that I've always had is selling something that not doesn't necessarily equate, right? I think like the Bullet Man thing.
mm,
I think that um that provides a good exercise for people. It provides insight
mm,
into maybe how people are going to react. Um, it also provides some mental conditioning, right? Of
yeah,
this big dude is like coming after me, and uh, I'm not gonna freeze or whatever the case might be. And I think the difficult challenge with those kinds of things is that a a one-time self-defense seminar will not do it,
no, no,
right? It's really not going to do it. And that's kind of the problem that I see a lot of that stuff. In fact, I don't know if you could. I think the only helpful thing you can do in a one-time self-defense seminar is to tell people, "Hey, taking a one-time self-defense seminar isn't going to really be very helpful." Now you can do things like,
unless you take a
um,
series of my very expensive
right,
one-time
that's
seminars.
right. Um, I think you can do things like awareness, you know, hey, look, carry, I always tell everybody, carry a flashlight with you. Like always carry a flashlight. And if you're someone that works late downtown or something like that and you have to walk to your car, carry your flashlight in your hand and use your flashlight. If someone approaches
Hmm.
you, you put that flashlight in their eyes,
Yep.
right? And so those little sort of tips that can get you those crucial seconds and that kind of thing, I think those are valuable.
Yeah. No, that's like 98% of whenever I do self-defense seminars is like just hope, awareness, avoidance, escape, control. And
Yes.
it's like ding, ding,
Yes.
ding, yeah, like that. Like
Yeah.
one of the things that I always talk about is I always like when I'm out in a boot, as we say up here in Canada, I get going into a store, they always have like like tourism magazines and like, like rental apartments and whatever,
hmm
or newspapers, like whatever the local
Yeah.
sort of things happening. And I usually, when especially when I'm out with the family, I get one and I roll it up and I just carry it around with me. Especially a
Right,
nice solid one, right? Because now I've
right.
got some sort of
Something,
something that,
something. Well,
well,
and I,
um,
for example, this is the flashlight I carry with me every
ooh, look
day,
at that.
right? Oh,
I,
look at that.
oh wow, you disappear. Oh, nice.
I know, right? No, it's like it's
It
a
makes you
2000
disappear.
lumen. I know. Well,
I know. Yeah,
yeah,
I get it. There you go. You did it again. That's awesome.
that's fun though.
You click it,
Um,
they did. You disappear. They can't see you. You just.
right. Uh, but that's what happens if you've ever had a flashlight in your eyes, especially if it's dark out.
Mhm.
Um, the world is going to disappear on you if you get it shined in your eyes.
Yeah.
And so I I advocate that as and like you said, the one thing too about a rolled up newspaper or something like that, it's not aggressive, right? If you have a Kubotan in your hand or you have pepper spray or something like that, that is instantly sort of aggressive. But a
Mhm.
flashlight or a rolled up newspaper or whatever the case might be, um, those are those are just things that everybody could happen to have in their hands, right?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I just think as far as and back to the question, the other thing about bullying, I guess, is it somewhat depends on the degree of bullying that is happening, right?
Right.
Is it is it pushy shovey on the playground, or is it somebody's threatening to curb stomp you and put you in the hospital?
Mhm.
Those are a bit different levels. The advice that I hesitate to give online, but the advice that I've always
See the
given,
asterisk. Boop.
right,
Here's the asterisk.
about bullying is sort of make them pay for it.
Mhm.
You might get beat up, but if you make them pay for it, they'll think twice about next time.
Yeah.
And that obviously is more of a school kind of bullying thing than if you're being bullied by adults or something
Mhm.
like that, If you're being bullied by adults, then that's quite a bit more scary situation than if it's just a schoolyard bully, right? I don't want to say just a
Yeah.
schoolyard bully, but
It's because there's lots of levels and there's lots of
yeah.
classification and bullying and there's for um, those of us more I don't know how you would call it minded these days. The people going like, oh, they're snowflakes, they're just sensitive. Yeah, there's a measure of that too. There are people who are
Yep,
perpetually outraged at every slight of
there are.
their unique flowerness.
Yep.
But then there are also a lot of people who are hurt and damaged and are needing help. So but
Yeah,
there's a casual word like I had a friend of mine, a guy I trained with, as a matter of fact, and he was a Wing Chun guy, and
the
he
best kind.
we well, so we were talking one day, and we always used to poke each other and whatnot, and he said something like he says like sometimes you're mean, man, and I'm like, what do you mean? He goes like sometimes when you're like taking the piss or whatever, he's just like you're kind of mean,
Ah,
and I'm like, really? I mean, because I mean, he was,
right,
he's kind of a mellow
right.
guy or whatever, but
Yeah, yeah,
we would just
yeah,
kind of jive about it. And I was like,
yeah.
really? He goes, yeah, sometimes, it really hurts when you say something like that. And I was like,
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
and he was a really good martial artist. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and, he'd been
Mm-hmm.
in some scraps and he
Mm-hmm.
defended himself and he was actually really better than me and a lot of time.
Yeah.
I was like, really? Well, good thing I didn't piss you off too much because then,
Right.
but, but I was like, oh, wow, I didn't really realize that what I was saying because and this kind of goes back to the question because when I responded to this person and they had kind of responded back, essentially kind of like, I guess I'm just gonna have to kind of grin and bear it. And I was like, you really shouldn't. No one should, just like this guy did was like, I pushed past his envelope and
Yeah.
he finally had had enough. And he didn't even say it like one time when we were like back and forthing. He just said it one time we were sitting around having a beer or whatever, you know, casually. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
and that went into an introspection period for me. Um, but so you don't always know what you're doing is affecting how it's affecting somebody. Um,
Yeah.
and
I
but
think,
my
yeah.
advice to them was like, okay, well, yeah, but you shouldn't. You should. I use the phrase, make yourself a hard target. When you just need to make yourself like, no, I'm not going to put up with that. And I'm just, you don't have to be physical and you don't have to be overboard, but you can just say, no, I don't appreciate that or whatever.
Right. Um, I don't know. I've always said like with kids, right? Do you want to build bigger walls or do you want your kids to have thicker armor? And
All
in
right.
my opinion, thicker armor is the way to go because then they can move about in the world. So
Yeah.
there is something to be said for uh, your center is unaffected, right? Like I, I cannot tell you how often, I think this is a guy thing, how often my dead mother has been assaulted and insulted and all of this stuff throughout the years by my friends, right? And we're just messing around. We're messing with each other, It's just a
Mhm.
thing. And
Right.
so it's one of those things where like yeah, I could get offended and upset, but there the intention in which it is given is not meant to offend and upset, right? So
Right.
I kind of think back to I go back to a lot of stuff that is intention. If I'm in a sparring session and somebody pops me in the mouth, I'm not gonna get mad at them. We're both doing the same thing.
Right.
Now, if they're getting super aggressive and they're trying to take that sparring up to a level that maybe I've even communicated to them that I don't want,
Right.
then I'm gonna get mad. And it's one of those things where if you can sort of put it back to intention and kind of move from your center to go, hey, if somebody calls me ugly, right? I I know, right? I can kind of check in with myself and go, no, I don't think that's true. I don't agree with that, right?
Yeah.
And you can move from your own center. And
Right. Well, that's like we were talking about, like, one of the things that training can do,
yes,
is give you that sort of confidence that,
yes,
like, no, I know that's not true.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you realize your self-worth of,
yeah,
uh,
exactly.
I'm okay. I've got a group of people. And again, it's one of the great things about martial arts training in a group is, you do have that level of, like when I always tell my students, when we start doing sparring, especially like one-step sparring, it's like you guys got to talk to each other, right? So,
Yeah,
they're making a sacred pact that they're going to step forward and punch, and
right,
so you get to block. They're feeding you a good technique, and they're feeding you a technique at the level you need it for what you need to do,
yeah,
and then you feel comfortable, like, okay, swing a little bit harder, swing a little bit
right,
faster, and then you build that up, and then you have like a group of people in your class, however big that is, and hopefully an instructor or instructors that buoy you up enough to, like,
yeah.
and by buoy you up, I don't mean like feed you a line, like, oh yeah, you're a walking death machine now. It's like
Right.
it's like, oh yeah,
Hey, good job
you're
on
really
that.
good,
Yeah,
and then maybe just push you a little bit more,
right,
maybe do what you needed to push a little more and make you feel good, so that way when someone comes up and goes like, you're a jerk, go like, oh, I'm not a jerk, I know I'm not a jerk, I've got a whole bunch of people that think I'm not a jerk.
right.
There's another side of that, of course, of enabling douchebags, but yeah, it's like Kyle said, it's all about context and proper communication,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
um
Um, oh, go ahead. Finish up.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
Kyle just
Yeah,
snapped me.
Kyle. No,
But
one of
having people that positive people
hmm
that move you in a good direction, and that you can bounce, like,
yeah.
dude, is my technique that good? Or like, what, and then having people like, well, I was in this situation, someone you can trust that you can talk to, uh, on whatever level. is also important, and that's another thing you get out of training.
Hmm. One of my favorite techniques, especially when I'm doing seminars or something like that, is that if we're doing partner drills, I tell everybody, I'm like, think of a scale from 1 to 10, and everybody start at a 5, right?
Yeah,
So if if you're doing the punching, you punch at a 5, and then the other person can say, okay, let's go up to a 6, let's go up to a 7. And they can go, 7, and again, it's all like mental stuff where if you start to shut down, right, and you're not learning anymore because your rational part isn't processing anymore,
right.
then you have to take that back, right? And
Yeah.
again,
Or you're overwhelmed and you just can't, like,
yes,
whoa,
yes. And it kind of
step
goes
for
back
us.
to our topic, right? Like it's that overwhelmed emotional reaction that you're really trying to combat.
Mhm.
And I do think that proper training can maybe not eliminate that, but can really significantly um, help with it. The other thing I think is, as far as training goes, what you just said is bullying makes you feel really bad about yourself. Right. So if you go into a school and people are encouraging and the biggest guy in the room says, let's you and I spar
Mhm.
because I want to help you. I
Yeah.
want to, I want to help you with this thing. And suddenly you have a community and suddenly like you don't feel so alone in the world. And even if your very, very specific situation doesn't change, maybe it can help in other ways, you know? So
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing but positive. I mean,
yeah,
we don't know what road anyone's on. So, I mean, this person that emailed me, I mean, they may have things going on.
yeah,
It kind of bummed me out that they said, like, oh, well, I guess I'll just have to kind of grin and
endure.
bear it. And I'm like, no, you don't, I mean,
Right.
but I don't know what's going on. I don't know all I can do is offer my advice. All these idiots out here that listen to us,
Yeah.
um, I say, like, you shouldn't be. And okay, well, first off, PSA from Karate Cafe, bullying is wrong. The fact that we
Yeah.
have to say, I know that we're kind of in an environment now where people being alpha males and or alpha females, I guess, and all that is kind of en vogue. And I've got my big beard and like ooh, whatever.
Right.
Don't bully
Yeah.
people. Don't push people around. Don't delight in bad things happening to random people just because it
Right.
makes you. It's like
It's
it's
bizarre. It's
it's
yeah.
people are people.
We live I like to remind people that we live in a society, right? You are not by yourself in this world. We all have to get along.
Yeah,
And so
no matter what that guy doing the YouTube video from his car is saying to you, it's
right. Yeah.
if he was so
Uh,
alpha, he would just be doing it outside where he's
yeah.
lost it here.
Don't
Um,
get me down the red pill path. I got a whole thing
yeah.
with that. So
Oh, poke.
nope.
Uh, we'll save that for the
We'll do another podcast.
Chronic Cafe after hours.
There
We'll
you
call it
go.
very
Exactly.
special one when we
We
get
what
saucy.
we really
Um,
think.
but but I mean, as far as from a personal standpoint, like no one, even if you don't want to train, no one should, um, you know, put up for with anything that they don't want to. And of course, that's easy to say, from some schmo on the internet. Um, but to let people push you around or put you in this situation, giving yourself some way to go, no, I'm good. I mean, even if that's leave the
Yeah.
situation, even if that's, if you're afraid of hurting someone's feelings, uh, from that standpoint to put yourself in a better position, you know, that's okay. Someone's over there, maybe I'll move over here, and then if they move over here, you move over there. If they move over there, like, okay, time to go, you know.
Right.
And that being said, then there's also that certain time where like, well, I shouldn't have to leave. That's kind of the deal.
Right.
It's like there's that
There
area
is.
of,
There is.
like I deserve to be here as much as you deserve to be
Yeah.
here. Why should I have to leave?
Yeah.
from a defense standpoint, it's like, well, maybe sometimes it's, I'll come back and get my drink later or whatever,
Yeah.
and it's that's the first level of self-defense, right? For us,
Yeah.
awareness is like, okay, I have now identified that as a threat,
Yeah.
quote unquote, and now I'm going to react accordingly.
Hmm. Well, and I think the thing not to do, like in this bullying situation, is nothing, right?
Right,
Doing nothing is the thing that you shouldn't do. Because I think that doing doing something uh at least gives you a sense of doing something, you know? When you have sort of this when you have the victim mentality, you just kind of give up and you fold. And at least if, I mean, do some push-ups. Do, do something to m make you feel like you're doing something.
hmm
Because giving up is not a healthy habit for anyone to have, right?
right,
Just saying, well, there's nothing I can do, I'm not going to do anything. That's not a healthy mentality to go through life with.
right,
Uh, if it's well, I don't know how I'm going to solve this problem, but I'm going to ask a guy on the internet that has a karate podcast, right? That's
right.
doing something. And so it's again, like I say, do something, and
Mhm.
move in that direction and don't give up because that has everything to do with your own self-worth and your own ability to feel like you can solve problems in your life.
Right. That's another, yeah. And so that's the fourth level of self-defense for us, control, right? You've
Yeah.
gained some control back. You've taken the initiative away from whoever it is.
Yes.
You kind of gain that back. Maybe they didn't expect you to do that, and now they're
Right.
kind of okay. Now what am I walking into? Well, one of the things that we talked about both in that and with other people was that freezing, like sort of after the fact, like I can't believe that just happened, like and now I'm kind of stuck. Um, I told a story about my wife was walking with our dog in downtown in Austin, and they were crossing the street, and uh, homelessly, mentally impaired uh, person just, I mean, like just like walking, 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 and as they passed, just and she keeps saying, "Karate kick the dog," and I keep saying, "Why you gotta say it's karate?" Um, but he just kicked our,
I'm sure he Wing Chun kicked the dog.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, kicked our dog, and she was still kind of a puppy. She was only like maybe a year old at that point. Uh, Kicked our dog, and then just kind of kept walking, like just boom, like it was that, like it was just like I'm gonna do that
Yep.
now and keep walking.
Yep.
And she said I was surrounded by like three or four bro types, hats on backwards or whatever, and they all just like and just kept walking. It's like they were like, I can't believe that just happened. And of course, my wife is like, I can't believe that just happened. And
Right.
and now our dog is trying, like whenever they see somebody like in a hoodie or whatever, she gets antsy. Um, but that's
Yeah.
the flip side
It's
is
hard to
like,
know what to do in that, like, because like that's an interesting example of do I escalate this situation,
right,
right?
you
Do
don't know
those
what you're getting into, at
do
that
those
at that point.
bros go, hey, what are you doing? And like, do they escalate that situation? I mean, do they wrestle the guy to the ground until there's a cop around? Like,
Right,
the reality is that sometimes the best choice is to walk away. And
right.
that ain't great. Sometimes bad things happen to good people, and it is unfortunate, but it is the way of the world as well.
Yeah, I mean, and so that the way I'm coming at that is like, and we also, because when you get into martial arts, and as many times as I've joked with our reality-based self-defense brethren and sister about, like, like they're just waiting for it. It's gonna happen, bro. It's gonna happen. I got my quick release knife, and I got my
Right,
my tech
right.
police boots on, and I'm
Uh-huh.
I'm ready to go
Uh-huh.
whenever it's gonna. And it's like it's probably not gonna happen. There's like a 90, but what if it does? But it's probably not going to happen. So why waste that energy? It's the same thing as like, it's like, guys that walk around and gals walk around packing because they expect, they're itching. In my
Right.
mind, they're itching for something to happen because they just want to be, you know, they want to be the dad taking their son to the hockey game, and then the terrorists attack, and then they have to go save everybody. They want to be every
Yeah.
80s, action,
And
whatever.
having done that before, it's not as glorious as people think.
Yeah, it's nowhere what the hockey. Yeah, because there's always violence in a hockey game.
Right.
You
Right.
don't need to bring violence to a hockey game. Right?
Yeah.
Elbows up, baby. Anyway, the so is to get people who are like, then they're also, looking to engage. It's like you don't have to be in someone's face. Like, for example, being the people who are, perpetually a raw nerve, ready to, be a social justice warrior, or, like,
Right.
oh, what? We see enough of that on the internet. You don't need that in person because you never know what you're walking into, no matter how confident you are in your abilities. There's always somebody better, and
Yeah.
there's always variables that you can't account for. And that's the thing about, pressure testing and stuff like that. There are always variables that you can't account for. And, that could be as simple as someone dropped their pen and you slip on it while you're,
Right.
and then you become part of the 90% that it goes to the ground, right? Or, or worse yet, they don't take you to the ground. And then what are you going to do? It's like, it's not, you can't
Yeah.
account for everything.
Yeah.
So
Or they pull out a
walking,
knife and start stabbing you.
right. I was
Suddenly
watching a video.
a pushy argument becomes a hospital trip, you know?
Right,
Like,
because I was watching this video the other day, and it was about Filipino martial arts, which I appreciate, even though I took everything from the Okinawans. But the guy was talking about like everything he's doing. He's like, when I do it is to get to my, and he pulled out a knife, and he's like,
hmm
it was a training knife, but he's like, and then the guy was doing it, and he was doing it, and then he, pulled one out of the left,
Yep.
and he cut. He's like, I'm always getting in position to get my knife. I'm like, that's not how I want to live my life. But there are people out there who do live
Right.
their life, and they're just waiting
Yeah. Well,
the
like,
opportunity to do that.
I mean,
And then, but
I carry this
right,
with me all the time.
right,
And
lovingly
I
handmade by yourself.
that's right. Love if,
Knives by Dan,
knives, that's right. Bladesbydan.com.
blades by Dan.
But I don't usually have this out. I mean, I usually just have it in my sheath. I wear it all the time. It's my everyday
I'm
carry.
ready to go, bro.
See? Exactly. Exactly. Um,
You need something unscrewed? I'm your guy. Like, when the terrorists come in and they're like, we
yeah,
need to disarm the bomb, who's gonna be ready? Me or you? Me.
that's
That's right.
true. That is true.
So
But if I'm walking through
that was
a
the Swiss
parking
Army knife I was
garage,
holding up for those of you on the podcast.
if I'm walking through a parking garage at night, I might grab this and just kind of hold it with me as
Yeah.
opposed to having it in my sheath. And so again, it's one of those things where you never know where the escalation is going to go. And
Right.
so I have known a lot of dangerous people that do not look dangerous.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like if you're training, and that's what I alluded to in the response was, there probably the overwhelming majority of martial art schools. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm going to step out there
oh
and say
no,
they
oh,
they don't train the soft skills. Even I mean, I don't freaking do it
it's not a part
naturally.
of the curriculum,
It's
you know?
it's not sexy. It's not cool to say like, and I held my hands up and back gently away, or like, hey,
Right.
I talked him down and bought him a drink and then got out of it.
Yes.
That's not cool. Cool is I made him tap out, bro. Or something like
And
that.
again, it's just not part of the curriculum. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's why, like right up front, I said there is a distinction between self-defense and martial arts. And I think that for the majority of martial arts, there's tradition, there's community, there's exercise, there's technique.
Mhm.
Um, but I think more often than not, there's not like this idea of strategically thinking and making yourself aware. And hey, when you're walking through that parking lot at night and that light is busted over your car,
Mhm.
right? It's just like that. One of the best things that you can train yourself in is seeing red flags and
Right.
going, this is a red flag for me. Maybe I need to be like, okay, I'm walking through this
Hi,
parking
Mary.
garage, and with that.
My friend Mary just popped in.
Oh, hey, Mary. I'm walking through this parking garage, and when I got here, that light over my car was not broken, and now the light over my car is broken.
Yeah,
This is
awareness. Once again,
this is
so
kind of sus, right? And it just
yeah,
it but again, that kind of stuff is typically not taught in a martial arts class, right? And
yeah.
uh for better or for worse. I just think that it's different.
Right,
So,
and it is. I mean, you can't. I can't. I'm not saying you can't. You can. Like like every class can't be. That it's a small subset, but
right.
it's a great. So one of the things my instructor used to do, my sensei would always just walk by, and when you're sitting there shooting the breeze, not very often because we were always training super hard,
That's
but
right.
he would just kind of walk by and kind of stealth up to you, and then wait for a moment, and then give you a shot to the giggleberries,
A
right?
love tap.
If you didn't have your hands down, sort of
Hmm.
protecting it or not
Hmm.
aware that he was there, he just went like and just
Right.
pop you, you're like,
Yeah.
oh. And so
Yeah.
I started having your spidey
Yep.
sense of when you're in class, it's
Right.
like
But
some
like
of
I
it,
was telling you, my instructor, oh, I learned to keep my hands up because I get popped
yeah,
in the head,
yeah, we kept our hands down. So
There you go.
yeah, that was the whole thing. And then doing kata, one of the things that we always did is when you're turning like 90 degrees or 180, you always have a hand sort of guarding your center line and one guarding your
Hmm.
giggleberries because you don't know what you're
Hmm.
turning into,
Yep.
that sort of thing. And it wasn't like you know, um, a hard and fast rule, but it was one that was
Right.
repeated almost every
Well,
class.
and it's funny
You
because
know,
it makes me
be
think
aware, be aware.
the body follows the eyes. I know that that has been a mantra for me as well. Like when you just talked about the kata, you turn your head and then you turn your body
Yeah.
because you have to be aware of what's happening over there before you
Mhm.
commit your body to something, right?
Right.
So, um, it's the old what was it? It's always sunny. The you want to give it the ocular pat down, as they say. Uh,
Well, that's one of the things that I mean picked up somewhere along the line of yeah, looking before I turn,
hmm.
and then very rarely like, well, I just walk out of a door, I open the door and I kind of look, and then I walk, and it's not that I'm
Yeah,
paranoid, it's just and I'll tell you why in a minute, and then you know uh, then when I was in the Navy, like on the boat carrying coffee back to whatever, it's like if you just
hmm.
open and step out and someone's coming across,
Yeah,
you know, you don't have a lot of room to negotiate.
yeah,
And then when I was working news and carrying equipment and tripod sticks and stuff like that, you need to look where you're going to like get
yeah,
through people. And that was just another level of awareness that I learned in martial arts. I just applied everywhere
yeah,
else.
yeah. I know that I
And
have the habit. I walk downtown a lot, and there anybody who's walked in any downtown area, there's a lot of alcoves all over the
Mhm.
place. Closed down store fronts, or I don't even know, like the countless number of alcoves I walk by all the time.
Yeah.
And for me, it's sort of like if I'm usually walking with somebody else, so if we're walking and talking or whatever, I I do a little bit of the pie, right? Where like I make sure that I'm keeping an eye on the corner of that alcove,
Mhm.
because and it's so funny. I, we're off on a tangent now, but I'm curious about what you think, right? Um, uh, as the guy, I've always heard you're supposed to walk on the traffic side when you're walking, so that if somebody pulls up in a van and jumps out to grab somebody, and I'm thinking I take the inside because that's where all the alcoves and the corners are.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm worried about is somebody jumping out from an alley, right?
Mhm.
That is like somebody pulling up in a van, I'm gonna see that coming, even if I'm on the inside or the outside. Like
Right.
these alcoves and alleys, again, it's just an awareness thing where like you do develop that awareness of going, okay, you know what? There is a guy in that alcove, and I'm gonna give them a little bit more room than I usually would,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
So here's a nice little bit of trivia that's why everyone tunes in to Karate Cafe is the reason why in chivalry or whatever you want to call it,
Yes.
the gentleman walks on the outside and the woman walks on the inside because way back in the old timey days, cue sepia tone, um, remember houses were built and then they had like a second level up.
Yeah.
And that was because you got
Oh,
taxed on the square footage, but only on the bottom floor. So the bottom floor was always smaller than the top floor. Anyway, so
okay.
people,
That's fascinating. Yep.
so walking down the street with your lady love or your mom or whatever, you would walk on the outside because they were under the inside, so they stayed out of the rain. But the real reason was because people
The
used to
chamber
throw the
pots
chamber pots, and so they threw them out. So the gentleman would be on the outside,
side.
street side, and then yes, if like a wagon or something was coming down the street and it
Right.
splashed water, it would splash on the guy, rather than
Interesting.
that
That's
awareness.
fascinating. I did not
The
know that.
and so but so now,
Right.
flash forward to now, I say we change the
We've
gentlemanly
changed
thing
that tradition.
because now men should walk on the inside because
The
it's less
alcoves
likely.
and
Yeah,
alleys.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you've got stuff going on. So we here at Cry
There we
Cafe
go.
challenge the very uh,
Foundation
heart
of chivalry.
gentleman chivalry and gentlemanly behavior.
That's right.
Gentle person, I guess,
Gentle person.
See
Yeah.
right there, that
Yeah.
SJWs that come after me on that.
That's right.
But I'm just saying, whoever it is,
Yeah. Ultimately, the woman that I'm walking with can walk on whatever side she
whoever
wants, to
cares.
say the truth.
That's right, because you got blades just coming out.
And
Fighting.
she's probably tougher than I am. So
Right, exactly. So that's stuff like that.
awareness. Yeah.
Awareness is a huge thing, and having that awareness
Mm-hmm.
is one thing that especially, it doesn't necessarily address what the question was, but it's just one of the things of being aware. You're in that situation. Are you going to be in that situation? Are you going to be in a situation with people who are
Right.
going to do this sort of thing? If you're going to be someplace where those people are going to be that are going to
Mm-hmm.
hassle you like that,
Mm-hmm.
do you need to be there? Do you want to be
Yeah.
there? Whatever.
Yeah.
Should you be there? Sure. Then but
Right.
getting the gumption, the wherewithal, the chutzpah, the call it what you will, to
Yeah.
stake your claim in a non-combative, positive manner is kind of hard. Martial art training, I think, can help with that in a lot of aspects. I'm going to send them a link to this podcast after that,
Excellent.
and let them see what they want to see.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Find somebody to train with. That'd be my
we're
advice.
biased. Find somebody to train with.
Find somebody to
Uh,
train with.
Barring that, find a positive community of people that will support
Yeah.
you and help you
Yeah.
get past that
Yep.
or mitigate it or squash it. And then other than that, just be aware,
Yeah.
stay safe, get a flashlight so you can disappear like Dan does.
Get a flashlight.
For anyone who's listening to the podcast who didn't figure out what he flashed a light at the camera and it made him disappear into his background. I was like, that's
That's right.
awesome. I want one of those.
Yeah.
Boop, he
So
disappeared.
this thing is pretty bright though, right?
Yeah, it is.
Like that's gonna blind somebody. And
Yeah.
that's the brightest. And it's
Oh,
actually
geez.
warm when I get close to it.
Yeah.
And it
They,
does this too. You probably can't see that but it
yeah.
flashes as well. So
So
again,
here's a good push shout out to the fine folks at out there in Karate Cafe Land. In the comments, post your uh, favorite non physical self defense tips, a la Dan's flashlight, my light. It could be,
I
like
like
one of
it.
the things I tell everybody, I'm going to go ahead and steal somebody's thunder, is if you're working late at night or whatever, just call somebody and have them
Yeah,
on speaker and just walk to your car. That way you're talking to somebody or
that's a great one.
fake like you're talking to somebody.
Right.
That way, if someone's approaching you, you can actually describe what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
Pop the
Yeah.
video up and just,
That's a
whatever.
great
Anyway,
idea.
because we have technology, let's leverage that.
That.
But share your favorite non-physical, I guess, or
Or physical. We don't really care. Make
non-kinetic self-defense
non-kinetic.
moves, your go-to moves when you go out
Okay.
in the public. Other than that, I hope this helped anybody in particular. I hope that helped the person that sent me the question
Yeah.
specifically. And any thoughts or
No, no,
okay,
I don't have any thoughts in general.
no
So
thoughts, no
no.
thoughts. Then
This was gonna go
last
a
59
half an
minutes.
hour, right?
Right. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
here's another
We're right on track for our half an
Karate
hour.
Cafe where we give you a full hour, half hour.
That's
Two,
right.
two. Two opinions in
That's
one,
right. That's right.
two 30-minute sessions in one.
It's a half an hour of good stuff and a half an hour of BS. The problem is you don't know which particular
That's
moment
right.
is which, so you got to sift through it all.
Again, awareness, avoidance, and escape.
Mhm. Ah,
If you don't get it from your class, come to our podcast.
that's right.
Uh, it- anyway, people, leave that. Here's a little thing that I just learned. Uh, I actually misclicked the wrong thing, so I'm not actually on the Karate Cafe feed event. I'm now actually on my timeline. So we've been recording this. So we'll go and post the recording to the Karate Cafe feed, and but this will still go out as a podcast.
So you were live streaming to your personal page?
Hi. That's why my friend Mary is on there because she's not a martial artist, although she is a bad
Hey,
mamma jamma.
hey, we're
Uh,
working out some bugs, right?
yeah,
We're
Mary and I
working
have been
out,
in some situations where
yeah,
we've had to be aware and escape and
deal with some
avoid,
people.
and probably shouldn't have been there in the first place. But
Mm,
I
mm.
love you, Mary, and Dan. Always a pleasure to talk to you,
A pleasure.
and we will talk to you all again apparently very soon.